Hey guys, the CBT ended a couple days ago, and I'll tell you right now, I played this character for probably 3/4 of the CBT. I tried her in a ton of different comps. I had an absolute blast. She is not the meta-dominating character of the CBT by any means. She's not a Calipe, she's not a Magna, she's not fully autoable, but I had an absolute blast with her, and so I'm going to share some tips and tricks I learned, talk about her kit, talk about her strengths and weaknesses, how you can build her, etc. Hopefully give you a head start when the game is released, hopefully in a couple weeks, but we don't know for sure. And with that, welcome to Orlea. So now that we've seen what she looks like in game, let's talk a little bit about her archetype. Orlea is designed as a controller, which means she's supposed to be a little bit of a support character with buffs and heals and shields, but to be honest, she doesn't have a ton of buffs, and her shields aren't that great. It's mostly heals if anything. But she is an off DPS, so she's not going to be topping the damage charts, but she does do a lot of chip damage, and she has respectable single target damage, including one of her creatures that can scale infinitely throughout the fight for nuke damage on a boss or something like that. She is a little bit of a hand hog, which means she wants to keep a lot of cards of hers in your hand, which can be a problem if you're playing other characters that like to draw lots of cards, such as Tressa during their turn, because Orlea is going to want to already have a lot of cards in her hand, and it can be difficult to manage the cards without losing cards when you draw. In my opinion, she's not super auto-friendly. When I did watch the autoplay play her, I found that they used her cards very inefficiently. They would play them in the wrong order. I think there are other characters that have more simpler play patterns that people got better results with. So taking a look at her cards, you can already tell that even though she's a controller, she's meant to deal decent damage because she has 2 attack cards and 1 heal. And the heal would be the first one I get rid of if you were building her for some kind of deck, because the attack cards actually get upgraded with her potential. I'll explain later. The 4th card is called Sacred Censer and is your first introduction to her creation mechanic. It has the tag Outbreak of War, which means it will always be in your first 5 cards drawn, and it generates 2 creation cards. Now there are 3 different types of creations, and each of them has 3 star levels. This one creates the 1 stars. You can see here there's a Softie, a Swiftie, and a Toughie. The Softie buffs your team, the Swiftie becomes a single target nuke, and the Toughie will either heal or shield you depending on how you use it. An important thing to know here is that each of these cards and others of Orlea's have the retain/preserve tag, as well as a retain/preserve effect. These mean the same thing. I'm going to be calling it retain for the rest of this video, but if you see preserve, just know it means the same thing. You can see here for the Softie, if you use the card, it gives your team a buff for the rest of the turn, but if you retain the card and you keep it in your hand until the next turn, then you get a small buff to your next attack for your next card on your next turn. The Swiftie has a base damage if you use it, but that damage also scales every turn that you don't use it through the retain effect. And so this one can be saved up to be a giant nuke, especially the 3-star Swiftie. And then lastly, the Toughie, if you use the card, it gives you a big shield, and if you don't use the card, it gives you a small heal. And so you can kind of trade off and decide to use the Toughie when you're going to be taking a big hit to try to avoid taking any stress damage. And one way to get higher star versions of your creations is by getting multiple lower ones. If you have 2 1-star creations, they will combine into a larger 2-star creation. As you can see here, the Sacred Censer created 2 of the same 1-star Toughie, and they combined into a 2-star Toughie. Her next card is her Growth Acceleration card, which heals you a tiny bit, and then allows you to select 1 card in your hand. It has to be one of Orlea's cards, and double trigger the retain effect. You generally avoid doing this on a Softie. You might do it on a Toughie if you're really low on health and you don't have a Swiftie, but the best target is definitely a Swiftie to help scale your Swiftie's single target nuke, especially if you happen to get a 3-star Swiftie. This is basically the best card for them. Her next card is Annoying, which is a 0 cost that does fixed damage based on how many total cards in your hand. So obviously you'd want to play this when you have a total of 10 cards in your hand, and it'll deal 400% fixed damage to an enemy, fixed damage being damage that cannot benefit from crit. So this is a sizable nuke. 400% is a really good ratio for a 0 cost card and helps contribute to where her damage comes from. Her next card is Growing Creature. It takes 1 AP. The Growing Creature is a great way for you to get 3-star creatures pretty easily. If you play the card, it generates 1 creation card, but if you retain the card and leave it until the next turn, it will turn into a 3-star creation at random. And so it could give you a 3-star Toughie, or a 3-star Swiftie, or a 3-star Softie. And then lastly, her Will of Light skill gives you a big heal, and then activates the retain effect on all cards in hand. And so that's really good for all of your creatures. It'll benefit all of them, but especially your Swifties to help them scale up. And lastly, she has her Ego skill, which costs 6 and will create one of each type of 2-star creature in your hand. So you will get 1 2-star Tuffy, 1 2-star Softy, 1 2-star Swifty. As far as her potentials go, most of them are nothing to write home about. They're general, increases in damage, health, etc. She has a little bit of buff for her teammates, but this potential right here is really significant because it adds a 30% chance of creating a creature whenever you use your basic attack. And that's why I mentioned that her basic attacks are more important than her basic healing skill. I would drop the basic healing skill because extra creatures is almost never a bad thing. For partners, as a controller, you really have 2 options. You have the free-to-play Arwen, that's a 4-star, and she's more of a defensive controller partner. She increases your HP and your healing and gives you a stack of Panapoko's Cheer based on how many enemies are going to be attacking you, and the Panapoko's Cheer decreases the amount of damage you take 1 instance at a time per stack. And her skill heals you and applies damage reduction, which again reduces damage taken for 1 instance, so a little bit more defensive of an option. But the 5-star option that is meant to be paired with Orlea is Noelle. Noelle's passive is Hymn of Blessing that basically buffs everything Orlea wants to do. It increases all of her retain effects, her damage, her shield gain, and healing. It deals bonus fixed damage to all enemies, equal to 15% for each retain card, and that'll be higher at higher dupes. So that's 75%, 90% fixed damage to all of them. But also her Ego skill, in my opinion, is better than Arwen's. It gives a nice heal, but more importantly, it activates the retain effect of all of her cards, which helps you scale your Swifties, helps you heal with your Toughies, and helps you scale with your Softies as well. Now, which one is better at different dupes? We'll have to, I wasn't able to find Noelle's dupes in the closed beta test, so it's hard to compare, but my guess is that once you can get a couple dupes into Noelle, she's just going to be better than whatever Arwen is doing at that point in time. So now looking at the Manifest Ego, or as they're called for dupes in this game, in my opinion, the best thresholds are at +3 and +6. This is when you're going to see really big results. Her +1 reduces the AP on her Will of Light from 2 to 1 and adds the retain effect on it. Her 2 makes it so that whenever you evolve a creature to a 3-star, they automatically proc their retain ability. This is really good for Swifties to help them scale their damage. The other ones is just okay. The +3, Vivid Memory, upgrades your Ego skill, and it makes it so that Salvation, her Ego skill, doesn't just create 2-stars, but it also upgrades all of them to 3-star, which benefits from the Awakening Memory, the +2 Manifest Ego, which activates their retain ability. So you immediately create 3-3-stars, and you proc their retain abilities for all of them. +4, Inner Memory, gives a little bit more damage. +5, Complete Memory, buffs all of your cards a little bit by +3, which is about 6%, a little bit less than 6% once you start scaling them. And then lastly, at +6, Liberated Memory makes it so that whenever you use a creation card, you deal fixed damage to all enemies based on the star level value, which gives her Hello AoE. So between this and having Noelle, she actually starts to do quite a bit of AoE, in addition to her single target damage, and this is where she becomes kind of an off DPS. She's not going to be your primary DPS, but she can still do solid damage. The chick has a couple cool combos within her own epiphanies. I know it's hard to get multiple epiphanies together, so these are kind of like high rolls. I would definitely invest in keeping these around if you're able to hit them, but here are some fun ones. The first is doing Sacred Censor, the 2-cost one, and/or the Growing Creature that generates creation cards. Both of these become creature card engines, creating 1 creature card per turn, and either of those paired well with her 5th, the last 1-cost Annoying card that scales with number of creatures created. Could go absolutely bonkers. If you're creating 2 new creatures a turn, that's going to be 200% per turn. It's going to be scaling faster than your Swifties. You can go crazy with this. And then another pretty basic one, but still pretty nice, is Growth Acceleration, the 2 AP, going with a 3-star Swiftie. So if you get a 3-star Swiftie, you scale them up to 1,000 or 2,000% or what have you. And then this is a one-time use, it's an exhaust, but you select a card, you duplicate it, bam, you now have double the damage that you had before, again, still at 0 cost. This one's basically, if you want her to be a super DPS, I would pair it with a vulnerable or something else to increase your damage, but super nice combo. And then lastly, 3 of her sets of epiphanies have upgrades for specific creatures. So there's a set for, so the Sacred Censor, Growth Acceleration, and Growing Creature all have upgrades for specifically the Softies, specifically the Swifties, specifically the Tubbies. So if you want her to be supportive or dealing damage or healing and tanking, you can focus on, combining those ones if you happen to see ones of the same type within a run. There's definitely a couple units that she pairs better with than others. If you want to play her more as a supportive playstyle with strong Softy and Tuffy plays, one really good character is Kayron, and that's because Kayron loves when your team exhausts cards, and Orlea is going to be exhausting a hell of a lot of creatures for free through her normal plays. And so Kayron gets a lot of, normally he's very expensive, but his action points decrease and he deals more damage and he does more hits with exhaust, and Orlea really helps enable that. Another character or style, if you want to play a much more defensive one, you can run her with Maribel and maybe even Emir, which are both free 4-star characters. And you can play them with, you'll have infinite solid shields, you have tons of damage reduction and heals, while Orlea builds up to do, incredible amounts of nuke swifties, and you can make her kind of the carry that way, and pair her with a nice, I think Emir has vulnerable as well, so she can do some solid damage. And so those are 2 ways you can play her. Third way that I'm really interested in is the Will of Light. Right now, I don't believe it has an effect on any other character, because I don't believe any other character has a retain effect. A lot of them have the retain tag that the card will stick around, but they don't have the retain effect. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm really interested in finding some unit in the future that has that, and I'm hoping that character will pair well with Orlea. There are also a couple characters that I personally would avoid. One is Tressa. I mentioned this before. Orlea is a bit of a hand hog. She wants to keep a lot of cards in her hand, and Tressa has a couple really high damage combos, but they require using most of your hand size, where she wants to generate a bunch of knives, and then she has an epiphany upgrade that deals a ton of damage based off of how many knives you're holding, and you're just not going to be able to do that with Orlea already hogging up a lot of the hand space with her creatures and other cards. And another unit I'm not really interested in pairing with Orlea is Mika. Mika gives quite a bit of healing and quite a bit of action points. So you can play her if you have expensive cards, but Orlea doesn't have expensive cards, and Mika will end up taking just a lot of space in the 5 cards that you draw every turn. She doesn't generate much draw on her own, and you're going to find a lot of turns you don't have cards to play and you have action points to use. So those are 2 characters I would avoid. And of course, if you want Orlea to deal big damage, you don't want to be building morale on her, because morale increases the raw percentages, and so that works really well with multi-hits. If you have a 60% 2 times, morale is better than one single 120%, because it actually affects the percent itself. But I believe vulnerable will increase the total damage, regardless of what the ratio is and how many hits it is. And so usually you want to pair her with units that are vulnerable, and quite a few do. Calliope has it, Magna has it, Rin has it, Owen and Emir, a ton of different units have vulnerable. So if you want her to deal a ton of damage, you should probably pair them with a vulnerable unit. And since Orlea is one of the characters whose ego skill costs 6, you're going to want to make sure each turn, if you can, that you farm ego skill at the end of the fight. If you leave like one weak enemy who's just doing little dinky hits, just keep running through turns to try to get your ego skill, or try to get your ego, whatever that meter is called, up as high as possible before you go to the next fight, so that you can start with a full bar and cycle through your ego skills to get to Orlea as soon as possible, because she wants to get a Swiftie to start scaling. And one card that really helps with that is the Strategic Starting Point card. It is a neutral card. I think it's one of the better ones, because again, Orlea is a little bit expensive and you may not start with her in your selection of 3. You may have to use 1 or 2 cheaper ones to get access to the Orlea one, and the Strategic Starting Point can really help with that. And that's all I wanted to share about Orlea today. I had a ton of fun putting this video together. Orlea really made the CBT super fun for me. I had a blast playing this character. I think she's really well designed, has great animations, etc. So if you had fun, if you got anything out of this, please feel free to like, subscribe, etc. I appreciate any input, any interaction. It does help the algorithm. I will say as well that things may change between the CBT and the final game release, so I'll try to keep you abreast of any changes that we are made aware of with regards to Orlea, but I'll be making other guides for other characters too and following some of their content, but this was kind of my first pet project for this game. So anyway, thanks for sticking around. I hope when the game comes out you have as much fun with it as I did this past weekend, and I'll catch you later.